Hey guys, tonight we're drifting into a story that might just surprise you, because it smells amazing. Picture this, a misty pine forest, soft moss under your feet, and the gentle rustle of bamboo leaves above. There's a figure standing there, not shouting, not fighting, just quiet, motionless, calm. A glint of polished armor catches the moonlight, and floating through the cool air, sandalwood. Yes, really. You're about to slip into the world of the samurai, legendary warriors who, believe it or not, took their fragrance just as seriously as their swords, but not like modern influencers spritzing on designer cologne. No, this was deeper, philosophical, ritualistic, sometimes even romantic. You're going to learn how scent became a part of a warrior's soul, and why smelling good was just as important as fighting well. Honestly, with the amount of care they put into their grooming, you'd feel underdressed in your pajamas. If you were a time traveler dropped into feudal Japan without at least 3 layers of incense, a silk robe, and a handwritten death poem in your pocket, you wouldn't last 10 minutes. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You walk along a narrow path paved with round river stones, smooth and cool like forgotten mochi. Every step crackles softly through dry autumn leaves. The air is crisp, tinged with smoke and pine. But there's something else too. A trace of scent still lingering. A samurai has passed this way. You didn't see him, but you smell him. It's not sweat, not iron, not the harsh tang of blood or steel. No, this is something else. A blend of amber, dried citrus peel, and the smoldering richness of rare wood. The kind of smell that makes you pause and wonder whether you're being watched or serenaded. In feudal Japan, samurai were more than warriors. They were the living embodiment of ideals, grace, precision, restraint, and sometimes perfume. Before going to battle, some samurai didn't just sharpen blades. They perfumed their hair, slipped incense pouches into their armor, and dabbed their garments with carefully chosen fragrances, not to impress others, but to prepare for death. Yes, death. Glorious, fragrant death. They believed if they fell on the battlefield, the people who discovered their body would know. This was someone of dignity. Someone who faced the end not with fear, but with style. You didn't just die, you died elegantly. In a way, scent was a kind of posthumous resume. It said, I lived with honor. It whispered, I prepared for this. And it helped them stay calm. Think about it. Even now, you take a deep breath of lavender or cedarwood to soothe yourself. Samurai knew the same. Before a duel, they'd breathe deeply, drawing in the smoky sweetness of incense to still their minds. They became something like calming assassins, smooth, composed, and lightly floral. Now, not every warrior had perfect taste. Historical records suggest some may have gone a little overboard. Picture a samurai so saturated in perfume that bees start following him. It happened. Probably. Maybe. But most knew how to balance strength with subtlety. Their scent didn't shout. It whispered. And for them, it wasn't about vanity. It was about control. In a world where they could lose everything, their scent was theirs to command. It was the last thing they chose before they might vanish forever. Historians still debate how widespread this practice truly was. Some argue it was limited to the courtly elite, those samurai who spent as much time writing haiku as swinging swords. Others believe it was a broader trend across regions, woven into the culture like threads of silk in a battle banner. Either way, you're not just following a story, you're following a trail of scent, through forests, across dusty roads, and into the chambers where warriors got ready to die beautifully. So for now, pause, breathe. Do you smell that? Something smoky, something sweet, like memory itself just lit a stick of incense in your mind. There's more to come, so much more. You find yourself standing before a wooden house, quiet, dimly lit, and simple in its beauty. Sliding doors creak softly as you step inside. The scent hits you first. Not sharp like citrus, not floral like roses. No, it's mellow, warm, and clean. Hinoki wood, steamed water, a whisper of green tea, a bathhouse. But not just any bathhouse. This is a private chamber attached to a samurai's home, and you've arrived at the most sacred hour of his daily routine, the bath before battle. You watch him carefully. He steps onto the smooth cedar slats and lowers himself into a deep wooden tub, steam rising like the breath of ancient ghosts. His eyes close. His hands rest calmly on his knees. He doesn't speak. You think he might be meditating, but actually, he's soaking. Because before picking up a katana, a proper samurai picks up a wooden ladle. Hygiene wasn't just a matter of cleanliness. It was a matter of discipline and dignity. They bathed not just to cleanse the body, but to align the spirit. In a way, this ritual was their version of putting on armor. Not steel, but serenity. You lean closer. The water carries more than heat. A subtle scent lingers in the air. Yuzu peel, pine needles, a hint of ground clove. It smells like winter. And resolve. This is where the perfume begins. You may imagine warriors gearing up in tents with grunts and growls. But here, the soundscape is different. Water trickling into a tub, fabric rustling as robes are folded with care, and the faint snap of a cork as oils are uncapped. Yes, there's a small lacquered box sitting on a nearby shelf. Inside are slivers of scented woods, folded cloth sachets, and delicate combs. One comb has been dipped in camellia oil and clove. Not for vanity, for presence, for death. You're learning something strange tonight. In this world, death was not always a roar, it was often a fragrance. Imagine preparing for your own funeral every day, not with tears, but with grace. That's what these men did. They bathed in hot water, perfumed their robes, and stepped into battle as if they were stepping onto a stage. Because in a way, they were. The audience. Fate. Ancestors. Maybe even their enemies. You never know who will be there to see your final moment. But one thing's for sure. You want to smell like you had your life together. And yes, before you ask, there were full-blown bathhouse rivalries. Some samurai were rumored to spend more time soaking and scenting than practicing swordplay, like modern gym-goers who post more selfies than reps. But there were practical reasons too. Baths prevented infections, kept armor from rubbing raw skin. And in a hot, humid country like Japan, let's just say, no one wants a funky battlefield. Still, there was something deeper, something almost poetic, because as the steam curled round the room and the samurai gently scrubbed his arms with cloth, he wasn't just washing off dirt, he was washing off fear. He was reminding himself, I am still alive, and that's important when you might not be tomorrow. Some warriors preferred sandalwood, others liked agarwood, rich, dark, almost sweet. A few elite ones had imported oils that smelled like distant lands, frankincense from Arabia, cinnamon from the Spice Islands. Their scent trail read like a travel log they never had time to write. But no matter what they chose, the goal was the same: composure. Think of it like a bedtime routine, except instead of preparing for sleep, you're preparing to possibly never wake up. A little intense, right? Still, there's something weirdly comforting about it. The idea that a hot bath and a dab of perfume could give you the courage to face a sword. Or worse, a messy political duel with a sneaky cousin. Historians still debate whether this level of grooming was common practice or limited to higher-ranking samurai. Some scrolls describe elaborate bathing setups, while others suggest field warriors barely had time to clean their boots. But there's enough evidence, letters, poems, artifacts, to show that for many, scent and water were part of the armor. And here's the funny thing. These guys were so clean, so fragrant, so composed. They kind of make modern self-care influencers look lazy. You try to imagine it. A warrior, fully armored, carrying incense in one sleeve and a death poem in the other. His mind clear, his body calm, his heart steady. Ready to live. Ready to die. and smelling really, really good while doing it. You hear the sound of him stepping out of the bath now. Water droplets fall like gentle rain onto the cedar planks. He dries himself with cloth embroidered in his family crest. Then, wordlessly, he begins to layer his robe. Slowly, precisely. The scent of hinoki fades. The scent of battle draws near. You don't know where he's going, but you know how he'll arrive. Fresh, focused, and fragranced. You follow him barefoot, along a winding corridor that smells of old paper, polished floors, and something sweet burning faintly in the distance. The light here is softer. Lanterns flicker behind parchment screens, casting long, dreamy shadows on the walls. You could almost fall asleep just watching them dance, but you keep walking, because now you're moving backward in time. Before the warriors, before the swords, before even the word samurai became legend, there was fragrance. And it all started with poetry. You've entered the Heian period. This was Japan in its silkiest, slowest, most romantic form. No wars, just art. Courtiers floated across palace halls in 12-layer robes, whispering verses and fanning themselves under cherry trees. They didn't battle with blades. They battled with scent. In fact, the perfume game here was so strong it could make or break your romantic reputation. Forget how you looked. If you didn't smell like a work of art, you weren't getting any handwritten love letters. Brutal, right? Men and women alike wore scent not on skin but on silk, carefully infused with custom blends. Imagine a courtier spending an hour not writing a poem, but airing his robes over a dish of smoking incense, letting the scent soak in like marinade. Honestly, it sounds delicious. They called it takemono owaze, the art of blending fragrances, a gentle competition, a kind of perfume battle royale, where participants tried to out-scent each other. It's like if America's Next Top Model was about who smelled most like spring rain and crushed jasmine, and the judges? Not fashionistas. Poets. You're amused, but it makes sense. These people lived by their senses: texture, taste, sound, and scent. You peek into one room and see a nobleman kneeling before a box the size of a small cat. Inside, neatly arranged spices, woods, and oils. He holds a tiny wooden spatula and stirs a paste. Ginger, clove, and something untranslatable that smells like a memory you didn't know you had. He tests it, adjusts, frowns, adds a pinch more sandalwood, a drop of plum. This isn't vanity. This is identity. Because in Heian society, your scent lingered longer than your name. It floated behind you in the palace halls, clinging to curtains and letters. A lover would trace the fragrance on a fan and whisper, "Ah, it's him." And here's the kicker. This ritual of scent wasn't confined to the nobles. Over time, their habits drifted down through the social ranks, like trends do. Samurai, centuries later, adopted many Heian customs as part of their aesthetic discipline. So now you understand something critical. When a samurai perfumed himself, he wasn't just copying fashion. He was reaching back, honoring an older, softer time. He was blending steel and poetry. That's oddly beautiful. But let's not forget the humor. Some historical diaries include spicy gossip. One noblewoman wrote that her suitor's robes smelled like overcooked medicine and swamp lilies. Yikes, that's the Heian version of ghosting someone because of their cologne. Still, most of them got it right. There's even a famous tale about a courtier whose scent was so intoxicating that women recognized him even when he wore someone else's robes. Talk about a fragrance fingerprint. Modern perfumers would be jealous. These people blended woods, herbs, flowers, even minerals, ground and aged like fine wine. Some ingredients came from China, others from Southeast Asia. The recipes were secret, passed down through families or guarded by monks. And remember that box the samurai opened earlier, in Section 1? The one with the mysterious pouches and wood chips? Yeah, that box has Heian blood in it. The traditions didn't vanish, they evolved. When the world got rougher, when swords replaced scrolls, the poetry didn't disappear. It just got quieter, tucked inside armor. hidden in folds of a battle robe like a secret. I was once a child of beauty, and I haven't forgotten. Historians still argue whether the samurai's love for fragrance was born from imitation or inheritance. But honestly, does it matter? It smells like both. You trail your fingers along the wall, feeling the faint indentations left by centuries of movement. Perfume doesn't last forever, but its memory lingers, like a whisper, like a laugh in the next room, like someone you loved leaning in just a little closer than necessary. So now, when a warrior steps onto the battlefield smelling of incense and orange peel, he isn't just being dramatic. He's bringing a 1,000-year-old love letter into war. And suddenly, that robe he's wearing doesn't look so plain. It glows with memory. And it smells like someone who knows who he is. You wake to the sound of something soft brushing against wood. It takes you a moment to realize it's the swish of cloth, layer upon layer, being wrapped with care. Someone is getting dressed, not in a hurry. No panic. Just precise, practiced motions. You peek through a slatted screen. There he is again, our samurai. Only now he's tying the final sash of his armor. The lacquered plates glint like still water and tucked neatly along the inner lining of his cuirass. Are sachets, tiny cloth pouches the size of matchboxes, tied shut with red silk. They look innocent. But make no mistake, this man smells incredible. You wouldn't expect it. After all, this is preparation for war, not a date night at a Kyoto jazz cafe. But here he is, tucking fragrant bundles under his arms, behind his collar, even inside the wrist of his glove. If you're picturing a battlefield that smells like a boutique candle store, you're not far off. And this wasn't rare. Many samurai treated scent like strategy. These perfumed packets, called nioi bukuro, were hand-blended, often by wives, mothers, or temple artisans. Each had its own mix: cedar bark, cinnamon, clove, ambergris, crushed orchid. A recipe might include 10 ingredients or 20, depending on the season, the family tradition, or just the mood. One samurai was rumored to carry a pouch scented like roasted tea and plum blossom, so recognizable that his enemies nicknamed him the Orchard Ghost. Yes, even your enemies noticed. Some warriors used scent to intimidate. Imagine facing down a deadly swordsman whose armor radiates calm sandalwood, as if to say, "I've made peace with my death." Have you? Others used it to soothe. A general might walk the line of his troops before battle, each step trailing soft hints of myrrh and pine resin, reminding them of home, of temples, of quiet mornings. There was even a story, possibly exaggerated, but fun anyway, about a samurai who applied so much incense oil that the enemy smelled him coming through the fog and mistook it for divine intervention. They surrendered. He accepted. No questions asked. And you know what? That kind of silent theater mattered, because in the samurai world, battle wasn't just brute force. It was performance, grace, ritual. The way you moved, the way you dressed, even. The way you smelled communicated who you were. Were you disciplined? Were you noble? Were you clean? Cleanliness mattered. A stinking warrior was seen as undisciplined, sloppy, probably the kind of guy who didn't write thank you notes or fold his laundry. Not someone to trust with your flanks in a sword fight, so scent became a part of self-respect, a declaration of inner order. Even if everything else was chaos, of course there were critics. Some old-school tough types claimed fragrance weakened the spirit. Why mask the smell of sweat and blood? They argued. That's the scent of courage. But others fired back with elegance. Scent isn't a mask, they'd say. It's memory. It's focus. It's how we walk into death with dignity. Honestly, both sides probably had a point. But you're just happy you don't have to choose between soap and sword today. The most fascinating part, many of these samurai weren't perfuming themselves for others. They weren't trying to be admired or remembered. They were scenting themselves for the gods. In certain schools of Buddhism and Shinto, smell is a sacred offering. Incense carries prayers, purifies space. So a warrior going into battle wasn't just dressing up. He was presenting himself as worthy of the ancestors' gaze. Think of it like this, a final audition. Your body is the stage, your soul is the script, and your perfume, that's your monologue. Silent, evocative, undeniable. Historians still puzzle over how many warriors truly followed this path. Some scrolls suggest it was a rare, almost mystical, tradition. Others imply it was as common as strapping on greaves. But across regions, families, and centuries, the pattern repeats. Scent mattered, and sometimes it mattered enough to save a life. There's one story of a spy disguised as a samurai who was nearly successful until a sharp-nosed servant noticed he didn't carry the clan's signature fragrance. His cover was blown. The servant was promoted. And the spy, well, he didn't make it to the sequel. So yes, in this world your scent was your passport, your fingerprint, your flag. And now as you watch this samurai tighten the last cord on his breastplate, you notice something strange. He closes his eyes, breaths in slow and deep. A faint smile appears, not because he expects to win, but because he smells like who he is. And in a world full of noise, sometimes that's the quietest form of courage. The air outside is colder now. You step from the corridor into the open, and a wind brushes your face. Crisp, pine-scented, laced with wood smoke and winter soil. The world has shifted. You can feel it. So can he. Our samurai stands at the edge of a wide field. Mist drifts across the grass like forgotten ghosts, and somewhere in the distance, a hawk cries once, then goes silent. He doesn't flinch. His armor is tied. His sword hangs steady at his hip, and beneath it all, threaded through the silence like a secret, he smells faintly of plum blossom and clove. It's a small detail, but it matters, because this is the part no one really talks about. How death, in the samurai mind, wasn't just an end. It was a moment, and moments deserved dignity. A warrior might not control how he died, but he could control how he arrived at death, and that meant looking sharp, hair tied, armor straight, poem composed, and yes, smelling like something that whispered, "This wasn't an accident. I meant to be here." You find it strange, maybe even beautiful, that a man would dab perfume onto his wrists before drawing a blade. But that's exactly what many did. Especially those from elite schools who believed that a warrior should meet death the same way he met life. Clean, composed, with a hint of mystery. There's even an old saying, the warrior's scent should reach heaven before his blood touches the earth. Dramatic? Absolutely. But this was a culture where drama was the quiet kind, the kind you wore under your robes, the kind that smelled like sandalwood and regret. And it wasn't just for show. After battle, when the field was still, and the only movement came from birds or the wind, there were people assigned to find the fallen, to identify them, to collect the bodies with care. And often they recognized a warrior not by his face, which might be obscured by dirt or damage, but by his scent. His personal fragrance, crafted over years, maybe even generations. One warrior was said to wear a blend of pine resin, orange peel, and rare shell powder. His scent was so distinctive that when he was found on the battlefield, his entire family line was identified before anyone even lifted his helmet. His fragrance was his signature, and for some that mattered more than armor, more than victory. There's an intimacy to it, isn't there? The idea that even in death you might reach someone, not with words, not with eyes, but with scent. That final exhale, carrying the last traces of who you were. The samurai didn't fear this. If anything, they prepared for it. Before battle, many composed jisei, death poems, but they also chose their robes carefully, applied fragrance with intention, and sometimes left instructions. Use this blend. It reminds me of home. That word, home, floats through your mind like incense, because that's what many of these scents were about. Memory, origin, the scent of the trees behind your childhood house, the tea your grandmother boiled, the rain on the stone garden in early spring. Even in the chaos of war, they reached for comfort. And it wasn't just men. Wives, sisters, and daughters often prepared the scent pouches. They would grind the woods, dry the herbs, and sew them into tiny bags, sometimes with a blessing stitched into the seam. You can imagine it, can't you? A woman's hands folding the cloth, her lips whispering a prayer, and her son or husband carrying that scent into battle, not just as fragrance, but as love. It's all so achingly human and funny in a way, because these fearsome warriors, these bringers of death, carried with them the smell of tenderness. Historians still argue about how much of this is romance, how much is fact. Some say the stories have been polished like poetry, cleaned of mud and blood. Others say the scent packets, the incense rituals, the pre-battle baths, they're all real, well-documented, and consistent across regions. But the truth doesn't have to be sharp-edged. Tonight it can be soft, like a whisper, like a sachet of clove tucked under a collar, like a goodbye you prepared long ago just in case. You look again at the samurai. He steps into the field. No hesitation. He smells like plum. He smells like tea. He smells like someone who knew this was always part of the path, and in a world where death can come suddenly, the quiet intention of a good scent becomes an act of rebellion, or maybe an act of grace. The field is empty now, just wind, a few bent reeds, and the whisper of footsteps fading into the fog. But your path doesn't end here. You follow it, through a narrow gate, past a koi pond shivering with ripples, and into a small writing room, filled with soft candlelight. Inside, letters, piles of them, neatly stacked scrolls, folded fans, even a few worn diaries. The paper is brittle in places, ink faded to soft gray, but the scent, oh, the scent, still lingers. Dried petals, smoked, cedar, a hint of mint that seems too flirtatious to be accidental. These aren't war reports or strategy scrolls. They're love letters, from women to samurai. And they're obsessed with one thing: scent. You pick one at random. It's addressed simply, "To him who walks like fog." Okay, dramatic. You're already intrigued. The writing flows with elegance. And right in the first paragraph, she describes the man's presence not by his height, his eyes, or even his voice, but by the way he smelled. She writes, "When you passed me under the camphor trees, I caught the scent of burnt mandarin peel and pine. I knew it was you, even though your head was lowered. No one else in this city walks with smoke and citrus." Another reads, "Even your silence smells of ash and plum wine. I sat by the window long after you'd left, just breathing the memory of you." You chuckle. It's oddly poetic and a little steamy. These women weren't shy, but more than that, they weren't guessing. They knew their warriors by scent alone. In a time before photographs, before audio recordings, even before reliable postal systems, fragrance became identity. A love letter might be scented with a pinch of the same incense she knew he wore in his collar, a pressed blossom from his garden, a sliver of the cloth she'd once touched. And these weren't one-sided crushes. Many samurai wrote back, sometimes with poems, sometimes with perfumed fans, sometimes with silk ribbons laced in their own signature scent blend. Imagine the exchange. Two people in separate towns, one sitting beneath a lantern, folding a letter that smells like chestnuts and ink. The other, unrolling it days later, breathing it in like a message whispered through time. And now you're wondering, how many relationships started with a fight? Not a sword duel, but a fragrance duel? Oh, is that cedar and cinnamon you're wearing? Bold choice. Yes, well, I thought I'd try something that didn't remind people of a funeral. There were even stories of rival lovers competing through scent. One noblewoman bragged that her samurai smelled like the moon after rain. Another replied, "Well, mine smells like firewood and temples, so checkmate." It was playful, but also powerful, because scent lasted. It clung to the fabric of memory, quite literally. There's one scroll here that seems older than the others, fragile, cracked at the edges. You gently lift it, and as you unfold it, a faint, almost imperceptible fragrance escapes. like dust and lilac and something you can't name but suddenly miss. The handwriting is shaky. A farewell letter. She writes, "If you must go, let the tea. Scent I left in your sleeve remind you. It will not keep you from death, but perhaps it will keep you from forgetting that you are loved." You pause. Read it again. That line hangs in the air like a thread of incense smoke curling toward the ceiling, and suddenly, all the sachets and powders and rituals make even more sense. This wasn't about vanity. It was about connection. In a world where war could tear families apart in a day, a carefully chosen fragrance became a lifeline, a memory, a promise, a way of saying you were real, you mattered, I remember. Historians sometimes brush past this part, choosing to focus on armor types and battlefield tactics. But love was here too, quiet, scented, written in cursive. So, the next time someone tells you samurai were all stoic and cold, just imagine one of them standing in the doorway of his home, sniffing his collar and thinking, "Does this make me smell brave?" Then walking into battle carrying not just a sword, but the ghost of someone's perfume. You step out of the room now, leaving the letters undisturbed. But as the door closes behind you, your clothes carry a whisper of that air. And just like that, you understand why scent was never just for style. It was a signature of the heart. You follow the breeze into a different part of town. Stone paths now, curving gently past tea houses and gate towers, until you reach a small market street. It's early morning. Lanterns are being taken down. Shopkeepers are sweeping their stoops, and steam curls from ceramic cups of barley tea. But what stops you isn't the sight. It's the smell. You catch it before you see him. The scent is woody, rich, and faintly bitter, like aged cypress soaked in rain and shadow. A moment later, a samurai passes by, silent as a falling leaf. No entourage, no fuss, just the crisp rustle of his hakama and that unmistakable fragrance. The heads of two elderly women turn in unison as he passes. They lean toward each other and whisper something you can't hear. Then they nod knowingly, because they recognize that smell. It's ranked. Literally. In Edo-era Japan, scent wasn't just a personal preference. It was an unspoken language of status, like a family crest, but for the nose. Certain blends of incense were so rare, so labor-intensive to produce, that only the wealthiest samurai or noble families could afford them. Others were closely guarded within elite clans, passed down through generations like secret recipes. You didn't just choose a scent because it smelled nice. You wore the scent that matched your rank. It was olfactory hierarchy. And oh boy, was it specific? You stroll past a fragrance shop with a lacquered sign out front, blends for warriors of distinction. Inside, the shopkeeper stands behind a glass case filled with neatly labeled boxes. Mountain Echo, Shadow Pine, Distant Bell. Each name sounds like a haiku had a baby with a mood ring. He doesn't look up as you browse. He knows. This is serious business. One blend, Crane Sleeps on Water, is so expensive it's kept in a box inside another box. Another, Wind in the Red Pavilion, is said to have been created for a retired general who only wore scent on the nights he practiced calligraphy shirtless. That's not a joke. That's just luxury. Even the wood used to burn incense. Mattered. Kayara, an ultra-rare resinous agar wood, was worth more than gold by weight. Possessing it wasn't just indulgence, it was political power. "Oh, you smell like Kayara. Please, take my castle and half my retainers." You pass another. Customer, a younger man in plainer robes. His scent is lighter, herbal, citrusy with a slightly sour top note. Not bad, not cheap, just middle tier. There's no shame in it. In fact, there were etiquette rules about which scents to wear at which rank and occasion. Showing up to poetry gathering in full battlefield incense? Cringe. Wearing your temple scent to a brothel? Also cringe. You had to know. And if you were ever unsure, you asked someone older, like an uncle or your fencing instructor/lifestyle coach. One historical record describes an apprenticeship where a young samurai's first lesson wasn't about sword grip, but about choosing a scent profile that wouldn't offend his host. Because honor isn't just about what you do, it's about how you smell while doing it. Some families even had official fragrance scrolls, documenting their preferred recipes. Think of it as a scented family tree. These scrolls included not just the ingredients, but the intended mood. For grieving, for courting, for going into exile politely. There's something both absurd and touching about it. Yes, there were snobs. Yes, people absolutely judged each other. And yes, some warriors probably got way too into it. One diary entry describes a man who refused to duel because his opponent's scent was too common. Bold move. But beneath the layers of social maneuvering, there was something purer. A belief that scent could reflect your inner state. That you could walk into a room, or onto a battlefield, or out of someone's life, and leave a fragrance behind that told your story. And let's be honest, you do remember people by how they smell. Even now, you probably remember your grandfather's aftershave, or the scent of your childhood home soap, or that weird cologne your friend wore in college that smelled like angry fruit. The samurai were just being deliberate about it. As you leave the shop, you pass a shrine where a few offerings have been laid out. Bowls of rice, folded paper cranes, and a thin ribbon of incense smoke curling into the morning air. You catch one last blend as you walk away. Jasmine and smoke, old wood, a trace of something like ink. It smells like memory. It smells like someone who knew exactly who they were. The town quiets as the sun begins to dip. Shadows stretch long across the rooftops, and lanterns blink to life like lazy fireflies. You find yourself in a less polished part of the city now. Narrow alleys, crooked tiles, the kind of place where secrets walk quietly and everyone minds their own business. This is where spies live, or at least where they pass through. And tonight, you're about to meet one. He moves like smoke, silent, smooth, unbothered by loose stones or low-hanging signs. His robes are clean but plain. His walk unremarkable, his face forgettable, almost too forgettable. You wouldn't look twice, except for one thing. He smells wrong. Not bad, just out of place. You catch it a second before anyone else does. A flicker of sandalwood, the sharpness of dried bay leaf, a note of incense that should have burned in a noble home. Not here, in this part of town. Then a voice calls out behind him. You, stop. The man freezes, slowly turns. A guard steps forward, nose twitching slightly like a confused hound. You're not from this district, the guard says. The spy stays quiet, but it's too late. That scent, elegant, refined, and entirely inappropriate for a backstreet fishmonger, is already working against him. Because here's the thing. In feudal Japan, perfume didn't just signal class or taste. It betrayed you. Many samurai clans had signature scents, carefully crafted blends worn only by their own. Guards and retainers were trained to recognize them. It was like a fragrant ID badge, and you couldn't just fake it. The recipes were closely guarded, the ingredients rare, and the layering technique, how the scents were heated, aged, applied, was so specific that even a perfect ingredient list wouldn't get you past a trained nose. There's a famous case, recorded in the diaries of a Kyoto magistrate, where a spy disguised as a wandering monk was caught not by his accent, his shoes, or his hair, but because the incense in his robe was 3 layers too strong and clearly mixed without temple cooling. Methods, translation, he overdid it. The poor guy tried to pass for humble, but he smelled like a festival cart. Back in our alley, the guard steps closer. He sniffs once, twice. His expression hardens. You wear the scent of Lord Asano's house. You shouldn't even know what that smells like. And just like that, the spy's cover is blown. You wonder for a moment, how did this happen? Was it arrogance? Did he underestimate the guard? Or did he simply forget to change his scent after sneaking through the Asano estate? We'll never do. All we know is this. A trained warrior never forgets the nose. And that brings you to a strange little truth. In this world, scent wasn't just sensory. It was security. Elite samurai households trained their staff to identify intruders by smell. Temples used incense signatures to protect sacred spaces. Even messengers sometimes scented letters to confirm authenticity, because handwriting could be forged, but a fragrance, that was harder. You could even argue that Japan had the first version of olfactory two-factor authentication. Of course, there were countermeasures. A few cunning spies developed scent-neutralizing balms. Others burned straw or pine to mask their passage. One particularly clever agent disguised himself as a scent-blind incense vendor. He made it through 3 provinces before a priest noticed his wares smelled slightly panicked. Still, the system worked more often than it failed. Because no matter how clever the disguise, the nose knows. Historians often downplay this side of espionage. They focus on codes, secret compartments, poisoned ink. But the truth is, more than a few secrets unraveled, because someone wore the wrong perfume to the wrong party. And honestly, it makes sense. Think of your own life. You might forget someone's name, their face, even their voice. But one whiff of the right perfume and boom, you're back in their kitchen 10 years ago eating fruit you didn't even like. That's power. So when a samurai chose a scent, he wasn't just making a style decision. He was making a tactical one. Something memorable enough to honor his clan, but subtle enough to keep him alive. As for the spy, he's gone now, hauled off by the guards, still silent. You'd feel bad if he hadn't tried to lie to a city that knew how to smell lies. You take one last look down the alley. The wind has shifted, the scent is gone, but the lesson lingers. Even in a world of shadows and whispers, scent remains the loudest truth. The morning comes soft and pale, as if someone turned the world's brightness down to let it rest a little longer. You walk through Kyoto now, old Kyoto, when the streets hummed with merchants, monks, and messengers balancing scrolls like baguettes. The sun filters through rice paper windows and paints the stones with long, sleepy stripes. And in the air, a perfume so gentle, so quiet, it feels like a memory more than a smell. You follow it. Down a narrow street with wooden eaves and faded signs, past baskets of dried chrysanthemum and fresh mochi cooling on bamboo trays, until you reach a shop, small, unassuming. Just a Norin curtain fluttering in the breeze and a wooden sign carved with 2 delicate kanji, Xiangxi, Koshi, Fragrance Master. You step inside. Immediately the world changes. The air is thick but not heavy, it's velvety. A mingling of burnt orange peel, crushed ginger root, green sandalwood, and some deeper note. Moss, rain, something like a hug from a tree that's read too many poems. This isn't just a perfume shop, it's where perfume is born. The master steps out from behind a folding screen. His robes are simple, stained with old ash and oil. His hands look like he's been grinding something for the last 40 years. Which, judging by his expression, he probably has. He nods once. Doesn't ask your name, just gestures for you to sit. Because here, scent isn't sold. It's crafted. You watch him work. No blenders, no bottles. Just trays of ingredients. Star. Anise, dried citrus, cinnamon bark, iris root, shell powder, crushed plum kernel, even tiny flakes of silver leaf. He starts mixing slowly. He doesn't weigh. He listens. A whisper of wood here. A pause. A sniff. A shake of his head. A tiny addition of something dark and crumbly that smells like ancient libraries in the rain. The blend builds like a story. You realize something quietly profound. These weren't just ingredients. These were chapters. Every samurai's scent had a narrative. 1 part family, 1 part aspiration, 1 part weather. Because yes, the weather mattered too. In the humid summers of Kyoto, certain woods bloomed while others dulled. Dry winters, lighter citrus or camphor notes worked better. Crisper, like fresh linen in the cold. Fragrance wasn't static. It adapted, and so did the warriors who wore it. Some samurai had a seasonal rotation. Spring, cherrywood and iris. Autumn, charred cedar and persimmon. One nobleman even reportedly had different incense blends for sunny days versus cloudy ones. Imagine waking up and thinking, overcast and a little nostalgic. Better go with melancholy plum today. And the blends weren't just based on mood. They reflected intent. There were battle scents, of course, bold, grounding, steady, but also ceremonial blends. Fragrance, for temple visits, diplomatic meetings, poetry gatherings, even contemplation scents, smoky, introspective mixes meant to be worn during long walks or when composing letters you weren't sure you'd send. The fragrance master shows you one such blend now. He calls it Komyo no Kage, shadow of radiance. It smells like burnt orange, earth, and whatever a midnight secret might smell like. You imagine a young samurai standing alone in his chamber, wearing that scent under his robe, writing something he'll never read aloud. And you understand. This was never about perfume. This was about presence. To choose a scent was to choose how you entered a space, how you left a space, how you were remembered. And Kyoto was the center of it all. The best artisans lived here. The rarest ingredients passed through its markets. Clans sent their sons to train not just in swordplay, but in incense etiquette. In this city, a misplaced fragrance could end a treaty. A well-chosen one could begin a marriage. Even today, in certain Kyoto homes, boxes of old incense are kept not for burning, but for remembering. A sniff is enough to bring back a whole season, a whole person. The fragrance master finishes his blend. He spoons it gently into a silk pouch, ties it with a red cord, and hands it to you without a word. You hold it to your nose, immediately. Warmth, longing, a flash of pine and plum, and something you can't name, but know you've missed. Itty. Smells like a doorway. And on the other side, memory, legacy, you. You leave the shop with the scent pouch still warm in your hand. The cord dangles from your fingers like a small, sleepy ribbon. You tuck it into your sleeve, and as you walk through Kyoto's quieter lanes, the fragrance trails with you, just barely. And then you stop, because something curious happens. With each breath of that gentle scent, clove, pine, maybe a touch of citrus, you feel your shoulders loosen, your jaw unclenches. Even your thoughts slow down, like someone turned down the volume on your inner monologue. You're not imagining this. The samurai didn't think they were either. Tonight, you step into the hidden layer of this world, the part where scent wasn't just for display or custom, but for the mind. Because among the many things a samurai trained for, swordsmanship, horsemanship, etiquette, there was one discipline most people forget, emotional regulation, and scent was their secret weapon. You see, centuries before modern psychology would hand out mindfulness apps and weighted blankets, Japanese warriors were practicing the mental equivalent of aromatherapy. They knew that certain smells could slow the heart, clear the head, or sharpen focus. They didn't call it dopamine regulation or prefrontal lobe calming. They just called it sitting with the smoke. Picture it. A samurai kneels alone, in a darkened room. A single stick of incense burns quietly nearby. He breathes in, holds, breathes out, again and again, not thinking, not planning, just being. The term for this wasn't meditation in the Western sense. It was closer to mokuso, mosyang, a kind of silent contemplation often used before training. The scent helped him drop into a state of clarity, less adrenaline, more intention. And this wasn't a rare thing. It was woven into the routine, before duels, before strategy meetings, before writing letters that might determine a family's future. Some warrior diaries even record their favorite focus scents. One man used red sandalwood to keep himself from stammering during high-pressure council meetings. Another used a crushed orchid and ash mixture to soften the inner noise before sword practice. You're starting to see it now. For these men, scent was armor for the inside, and the effects weren't just mental, they were social. Imagine two samurai facing off, not in battle but in tense negotiation. The room is quiet, the air still, but each man wears a distinct fragrance, carefully chosen. One smells like warm cedar. The other, like cold mint and iris. No words are spoken yet, but their scents already say everything. Who's calm? Who's proud? Who's trying to intimidate? Who's pretending not to be nervous? In a society where subtlety was power, the fragrance became a kind of soft language, a whisper in the room that shaped how people felt, even if they didn't consciously notice it. There's even a well-documented practice called kodo, shangdao, the way of incense. Think of it as tea ceremony's quieter, smokier cousin. Participants would gather, burn carefully chosen woods, and listen to the fragrance. Not smell, listen. They describe the scent in poetic metaphors. This smells like rain slipping off armor. This is the scent of a crow flying over a frozen lake. Okay, sure, that sounds dramatic. But when you think about it, doesn't your brain do that too? Haven't you ever caught a scent and said, "That smells like childhood," or "That's the smell of being late for school"? The samurai just had better vocabulary for it, and better incense. The most refined among them even layered scents for emotional effect. One for alertness, one for grounding, one for memory. They carried miniature incense presses, little woodblock kits, to make their own blends on the road, and it worked. There's a story of a young warrior who panicked during his first battle, breath ragged, hands trembling. His master leaned in and whispered, "You've trained your blade. Now smell your sleeves." The boy did, and inside his sleeves, a calming blend of rice straw and citrus peel. He breathed, and breathed again, and moved forward. Some historians dismiss these stories as superstition, as embellishment, but neuroscience today confirms it. Olfactory input connects directly to the limbic system, bypassing rational thought and landing squarely in emotion and memory, which means those sachets weren't nonsense. They were neuroscience in silk. You smile as you pass a small garden where a few camellias bloom despite the season. You close your eyes, inhale. Somewhere in the background a wind chime stirs, then quiets, and you wonder, what if you had a scent like that? One that calms you, one that holds you together, one that reminds you of exactly who you are when everything else tries to unravel you. The samurai did because they knew the mind was its own battlefield. And fragrance? Fragrance was a sword you didn't have to draw to win. The path winds gently upward now into quieter hills. The houses grow fewer. The trees thicken, rustling softly like they're trying not to wake the sky. You walk in silence until the slope flattens and a small gate appears ahead. It creaks as you push it open. Inside, a modest home tucked into the landscape like it grew there. The kind of place that never appears on maps but always feels like it remembers you. This was once a samurai's retreat, and as you step inside, you see what he left behind. A low table, a weathered screen, a shelf of calligraphy brushes and polished stones. And sitting on a cushion in the center of the room, a lacquered box, simple, square, black with gold inlay. Not locked, not hidden, just waiting. You kneel beside it. The air in the room changes, thickens. Your fingers gently lift the lid, and inside, you find the kind of treasure that never glitters, only glows. A comb, finely carved, still holding a trace of oil. Folded poem on rice paper. Words faded like whisper trails, a silk pouch. Worn, stained slightly with time. Still fragrant, a tiny mirror, polished, round, barely cracked. Its surface reflecting not your face but your posture. And a round incense ball, wrapped in paper that rustles like dried leaves. You open it. A puff of scent escapes. Sweet, earthy, ancient. This wasn't a weapons box. This was a memory vault. Because while most people imagine samurai leaving behind swords and battle scars, many left something quieter. Boxes like this, filled not with violence but with presence. Little items that told the story of a life lived deliberately. You pick up the incense ball. It smells like camphor and cinnamon and something that might be dried plum blossom or might just be longing. Each object is a memory, not for war, for after, for peace, for identity. You wonder who made this box. Was it the samurai himself? A lover? A child? Did they pack it all together, kneeling side by side, choosing what scent he would carry into the unknown? This wasn't unusual. In many families, especially those of high standing or artistic lineage, samurai created kobako, fragrance boxes, either as part of their everyday ritual or to prepare for a journey they weren't sure they'd return from. Some were portable, tucked into travel packs. Others, like this one, were kept in retirement homes, temples, or hidden drawers, only opened in remembrance. You lift the mirror now, and behind it, find something else. A strip of cloth, finely embroidered, edges frayed, on. It barely visible, a single-stitched kanji, wang, wasuru, to forget, except it's crossed out, replaced faintly with another, xiang, omu, to remember, and suddenly everything makes sense. This box isn't for mourning, it's for remembering without pain. You imagine the samurai in his final years. No longer riding out at dawn, no longer sharpening blades, no longer writing death poems by candlelight. Instead, he sits here, in this room, opens this box and remembers not just the battles but the scents that made him feel alive. The oil his mother combed into his hair before his first duel. The perfume his wife wore the first time they fought, and forgave. The incense the monk burned while stitching his shoulder wound. Humming a tune that was wildly off-key. The smell of his own sleeve soaked with sweat and cedar, after surviving something he didn't think he could. Historians often talk about legacy in terms of buildings, laws, territory. But this is legacy too. A box of scent, a box of self. And now you close the lid gently. The room exhales with you. A quiet scent rises, like someone just left or maybe just arrived. And in that moment, you don't feel like a visitor. You feel like someone remembering a version of yourself you didn't know existed until just now. Send continue when you're ready for Section 12. You descend back into the city just as evening settles its gentle weight on the rooftops. The lights are dimmer now, softer, as though Kyoto is speaking in a whisper. You follow the scent of something familiar, but this time it doesn't come from a warrior's robes or a merchant's stall. It comes from a temple. The gates are open. The path is lined with low lanterns, flickering like fireflies that forgot to go home. A hush hangs in the air. Not the heavy silence of secrets, but the light silence of listening. You step inside. Monks pass quietly, their heads bowed, robes swishing like autumn wind through rice stalks. But what truly surrounds you is the scent. Thick, warm, steady. It clings to the pillars, hangs in the rafters, sinks into your clothes, and you realize this is where the samurai's scent was born. Not in palaces, not in bathhouses, but here. Temples were the laboratories of fragrance. The monks. Unexpected perfumers. You watch as one monk tends to a small incense brazier in the corner of the hall. He moves slowly, reverently. A pinch of powdered resin. Twist of bark. A sprinkling of something pale and granular, ground pearl, bone ash. You're not sure. The scent that rises is deep and contemplative. Not showy, not sweet. It smells like wood, earth, quiet rain, and the space between two thoughts. This wasn't designed to impress. It was designed to center, and the samurai came, here to learn that. You see, for all their reputation as warriors, many samurai followed Zen or esoteric Buddhist paths that emphasized detachment, discipline, and mindfulness. And in these temples, they didn't just meditate, they studied scent, because scent was a teacher, a lesson in impermanence, a reminder that even the most exquisite fragrance disappears, that nothing clings, nothing lingers, not even us. Monks crafted blends not for fashion or flair, but for meaning. They used wood aged for decades, shells ground from sacred rivers, resin tapped from trees that hadn't bloomed in years. Each blend had purpose, one for grief, one for letting go, one for opening the mind, one for honoring the dead without clinging to them. The samurai came to learn these blends, not just to wear them, but to understand them. One monk centuries ago wrote in a journal, The warrior does not fear death, but he must be taught how to sit with silence. And that silence often came wrapped in scent. It's believed that many of the most famous samurai fragrance recipes were inherited directly from temple archives. Modified slightly, yes, but holding the same base woods, the same slow burning. Brilliant sometimes, monks created bespoke blends for specific warriors. A general about to enter a hopeless campaign might receive a pouch of smoke for clear decision. A young man grieving his brother might carry tears of plum root. Even children, those destined for war, were given incense sachets to keep their hearts soft in a world of iron. It was more than ritual. It was rescue. Because in the darkest moments, before a duel, after a funeral, on the eve of exile, these scents grounded them, reminded them who they were beneath the armor, beneath the titles. Just men, breathing. There's a story of a Ronin who returned to his childhood temple after years of wandering. He brought nothing, not even a blade, just a sachet. He knelt, placed it before the incense altar, and said, "This is all that's left of me." The monk smiled. "It's enough." That sachet, soot-stained, frayed at the edges, was placed in the temple's archive, not for display, for safekeeping. A note was added beside it. This man remembered what scent he carried when he forgot everything else. You look around now. The monks pass silently. Some glance at you, not surprised. It's as if they expected you. As if scent brought you here, you kneel, not because you're told, but because the air is so still, so full of gentle smoke and memory, that standing feels like noise. A stick of incense burns beside you. The smell is light, faintly sweet, almost nostalgic. And you wonder, maybe that's the whole point. To be remembered not by your victories or your weapons, but by how gently you sat, by the smoke you left behind, by the way you smelled when you were at peace. It's night now, but not a sharp-edged night, not the kind that wraps everything in silence and makes your footsteps feel loud. This is a soft night, a breathing night. The stars are blurry behind a veil of mist, and every lantern glow looks like it's been dipped in milk. You sit on the porch of a small countryside home, legs tucked beneath you, the wood warm from sun long gone. Crickets hum somewhere just beyond the hedges, and beside you sits an old man. He is samurai, or was. No armor now, no sword, just a simple robe and a hand resting on his knee like it's always been there. His hair is silver, his spine curved, but his voice, when he finally speaks, is quiet and clear, like a bell you didn't know was already ringing. "You know," he says, "we didn't wear perfume to impress anyone." He gestures lazily. "The night, we wore it to remember where we came from and where we were going." He chuckles to himself, then adds, "And sometimes because we didn't want the battlefield to smell like wet socks." You laugh, but then he grows still. He leans forward and pulls a small wooden box from his sleeve, no bigger than your palm, opens it. Inside, a pinch of dark powder, almost black. He lifts it to his nose and inhales. "Still works," he murmurs. "You ask what it is." "Smell," he says, holding it toward you. You do, and suddenly you're in a forest. Early morning, the smell of damp leaves, ash, bark peeled back by small animals, a hint of citrus, the kind that only blooms once a year. "I wore this the night before I lost my brother," he says. His voice doesn't tremble. It flows. We were camped just past the river. We hadn't spoken in a week. He was mad about a poem I wrote. Said it made him look like a fool. He smiles, which it did. You wait. He died the next day. I didn't cry until a week later, but that night, after the campfire burned low, I smelled this and I remembered him laughing. He leans back, eyes on the stars. We think we remember people by their voices, their faces, but it fades, all of it. What stays, what sneaks up on you years later, is the smell. You ask if that's why samurai used scent before death. He shakes his head slowly. "No," he says. "We didn't use it for death. We used it for life. And you understand, the sachets weren't about leaving a good impression for whoever found your body. They were about carrying something, memory, comfort, identity, with you, right into the fire. Because the battlefield was loud, muddy, chaotic, but scent was private, close, a little piece of home sewn into your collar. I carried the smell of my wife's hair, the old man continues. Not perfume, just the oil she used. She didn't even know I'd taken it. You glance over. He's smiling, eyes closed. Sometimes I think I died a long time ago, he says softly. But then I catch that scent, and I'm back in our house, watching her sweep the porch. And I think, not yet. You sit together like that for a long time. The incense has faded, the crickets have slowed. Even the stars seem to be holding their breath. And you realize, this man isn't telling you about fragrance. He's telling you how to hold on to what matters, to who you are, to the people you've loved and lost and remembered every time a breeze carried something familiar. He opens the little box once more, sprinkles a pinch of the powder onto the porch railing. The wind lifts it, spins it, carries it away. There, he says. Now you'll remember me too. You don't respond. You just breathe, and somewhere deep inside something stays. You return to the city one final time, not to the bustling markets nor the quiet temples, nor the bathhouses breathing steam into morning skies. No, tonight you walk deeper into the folds of Kyoto's oldest districts, where the cobblestones are worn smooth and the houses lean like they've been whispering to each other for centuries. There's a room tucked behind a gate. No sign. No candles in the window. Just a quiet door and the faint scent of time itself. You knock. A woman opens it. Her kimono is simple. Her voice, a murmur. She says nothing, just nods and gestures for you to enter. You pass through the doorway, like you're stepping into a memory. Inside, silence and a box, not one, not 10, hundreds. Shelves lined with lacquered cases, tiny drawers, pouches tied with faded ribbon, scrolls wrapped in cloth, all marked with calligraphy so delicate it might disappear if you breathed too hard. This is a private archive. A fragrance museum, but not the kind with labels and gift shops. This place wasn't built to show off. It was built to remember. The woman walks ahead, barefoot, silent. She stops at one shelf and lifts a slender case. She opens it. You expect perfume. Instead, you find a notebook. The pages are filled with scent recipes, but not just ingredients. There are dates, names, and descriptions that feel like tiny novels. Worn the night before Lord H departed for the Northern Front. He said it reminded him of the rain on his daughter's birthday. Made with temple cedar and plum for Lady S. She wore it to the poetry gathering where she confessed her grief. Carried into exile, burned weekly on cold mornings, helped him sleep. These aren't just records, they're biographies. Not of events, but of emotions. You run your hand along the shelf. Your fingers brush a pouch that smells faintly of chestnut smoke and something like apricot. Warm, comforting, humble. The tag says only, "For walking home." It's overwhelming. So many lives, so many stories. All captured not in ink or stone or steel, but in fragrance. The woman watches. You. Then in a voice that sounds like autumn leaves being rearranged by wind, she says, "Most people forget the scents, but they carry them anyway." She leads you to a small room in the back. There, behind a curtain of thin bamboo slats, lies a single object under glass, a fragment of silk, frayed at the edges, barely a finger wide. The note beside it reads, "The only piece left of the robe worn by Masanori Takeda on the final day of the Keicho campaign. Still carries the scent of his personal blend. Pine soot, dried chrysanthemum, sweet vinegar." You lean closer, and it's true. Even after centuries, the silk holds a whisper of him. It doesn't smell like glory, or death, or legend. It smells like someone who once stood quietly on a hill watching clouds move, who paused before battle to adjust his sash, who nodded to a friend without speaking, who thought, maybe, that someone far away might smell this, and remember he had once been gentle. You ask if people still come here? The woman nods. Families, monks. Sometimes strangers like you. You ask why she keeps it all. She doesn't answer. She just picks up a small brush, dips it in a bowl of powdered sandalwood, and writes a single kanji on fresh paper. Chi, iki, breath. Because that's all scent really is. A breath of who we were. A trace we leave behind. And in this quiet archive, among these faded pouches and soft-smelling memories, you realize the legacy of the samurai wasn't just steel and silence. It was fragrance, and it's still here waiting. You step out of the archive and into the night for the final time. The air greets you gently, cool, weightless, fragrant in the way only a sleeping city can be. You walk slowly, not out of tiredness, but reverence. The scent of everything you've past, incense, cedar, clove, memory, clings to your sleeves like polite ghosts. You've been traveling for hours, or maybe lifetimes. You don't know anymore. What you do know is this. Scent is no longer a detail to you. It's a language, a map, a kind of echo that never quite fades, no matter how far you go. Tonight, you find yourself on the edge of a garden. It's nothing grand. A few stones, a patch of moss, a pine tree that leans slightly as though trying to listen to something underground. And there, kneeling before a small altar, is someone new. A young samurai. Not in armor, in soft cotton robes. His hair is tied back. His eyes are closed. He places something on the altar. A pouch, small, embroidered. He lights a stick of incense beside it, and the smoke curls upward, slow and purposeful, as if even it knows this moment matters. You don't speak, but somehow you understand. This is his offering, not to gods, not to glory, but to stillness. And as you stand there watching him exhale, watching that little ribbon of smoke twirl toward the moon, you realize that this moment right here, is what all the fragrance was leading to. Not the battlefields, not the poetry recitals or the noble courts, but this quiet act of presence, of remembering, of choosing to be here, now, fully. And that's when the rhythm inside you begins to slow. Your breath, your thoughts, your heartbeat. You begin to forget what time it is, or if there ever was such a thing. The world is no longer a collection of people and dates and events. It is scent. It is smoke. It is memory. It is you. You inhale. The pine smells familiar. You exhale. So does the silence. Your body softens. Your mind stops reaching. You no longer need to follow the story, because you are the story now. You kneel beside the pine tree, close your eyes, and let the wind bring whatever it wants. Maybe it carries the last laugh of the old man on the porch. Maybe it carries the sigh of a letter never sent. Maybe it carries a single line of a death poem, still fragrant with the oils from a warrior's fingertips. You don't know, and you don't need to, because this is the end of the journey. The field has gone quiet, the incense has burned low, and the scent in the air is soft, sweet, and fading, like a memory that doesn't need to be remembered anymore, like someone you loved, smiling at you one last time from very far away. Like sleep, like peace, like the closing of a story that didn't need to be loud to be true. End of script. Sweet dreams.